Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for services, please take a few moments to silence any cell phones. Thank you.
Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai roi lo exar binodesh yarbitzeni. Al mei menuchot yonaleni. Nafshi shovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech b'geit sal mavet lo ira ra ki yatai madi. Shiftecha mishantecha heme yinachamuni. Ta roch lefanai shulchan neged zorarai. Dishenta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yurdfuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai liyarech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters, and he guides me on the paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. And though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. You are in the good hands of Rabbi Birkin, who was your family rabbi for many, many years, and we're fortunate to still have him in our community, Rabbi Birkin.
Thank you. So we've come together this afternoon for a very sad purpose as we gather to bid a fond farewell to our dear Stephen Fienberg. And as we now recall the blessings of his life, we want to offer thanks. Thanks to God for all that was good, for all that was true in his life, for the precious memories which will endure with each of us. Ribon Ha'olam, eternal God, our Creator, merciful Father, your children who are bowed in grief seek light to dispel the gloom which threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn for Stephen, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion, ease their burden of sorrow, send them your light and your peace. As it is written, fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you and sustain you with my power. We listen to the voice again of the psalmist. I've chosen a psalm I believe is appropriate to his life. Psalm number 15. It reads, Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai mi'agor b'halech, mi'yishkom b'har kodshecha, holech tamim u'foal tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al shono, lo asal l're'ehu ra. Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide on your holy mountain? One who lives with integrity, one who speaks the truth in his heart, one who does what is right, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to his fellow, who does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes, a vile person is despised, but he honors those who revere the Lord. He takes an oath, even to his own harm, and does not change. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. Ose ele lo yamot la'olam. Most people live in a world not of their own making. They're a product, rather, of circumstances outside of themselves. They live in a society and are dominated by its prevailing spirit, by its values and by its character. But here and there are rare individuals who, by some quality within themselves, succeed in creating an atmosphere, an aura about them, a climate which is the extension of their personality. Something radiates from within them that sets an atmosphere and the climate. The Jewish people have been blessed with many such individuals and has expressed its appreciation in a very wise and a very beautiful legend. This legend informs us that the world exists by reason of 36 good, gentle, and righteous personalities who sustain the world by the way they live their lives and the good deeds that they do. And according to this legend, nobody knows who belongs to this small group of people, and individuals themselves are not aware of their powers that they possess or the impact they have on others. And we today may not assign individuals in our midst of this rare company of spirits, but we do recognize that there are people who possess a certain quality of personality which creates a climate about them and helps to sustain the community of which they are a part. And I believe that Dr. Stephen Fienberg is one of those people. He had an extraordinary impact on his field, his academic field, his scientific field, world renowned, a great lover of Jewish life and the Jewish community, committed to this congregation. Personally, I am indebted to him for sharing with me, together with his wife Joyce, an evening that I will never forget. Invited me and my wife to a dinner, small dinner, 6 people I think, with Abba Eben. And it was literally a night that was totally memorable. But that was the kind of thing he did. He used this functioning in different communities. He called me and he said, Carnegie Mellon is bringing him here. Could we set up a public venue? We had him lecture to the Jewish community in our sanctuary. There was a dinner in between his talk in the afternoon, his talk in the evening. And I spent really one of the literally special nights of my life. And I thank Stephen, I thank Joyce for that opportunity. Stephen, as you who are here know, was a good and beloved person. He had a wonderful spirit about him. It was a spirit that brightened and cheered each of our lives. And now it's gone. All of us are enveloped in sorrow. That brilliant man who shared with us such a happy and optimistic outlook on life has left us. We now share a common grief at his passing. It's not only his beloved Joyce, who weeps at the separation of her life's companion of 51 years. It's not only the children who mourn the loss of their guide and their inspiration. It's not only his brother and the family that loses a trusted and wise counselor. It's not only his close personal friends who feel the heavy weight of the loss of a genuine friend, someone of impeccable character. It's not only you, his professional associates, who grieve over a man of the purest integrity and trustworthiness. It's not only his PhD students over the years who keenly feel the loss of someone who treated them with the utmost kindness and consideration. Rather, it's all of us, as individuals and as a community, who have suffered this irreparable loss. For we were drawn to Stephen by the magnetic qualities of his character and his goodness. And above all, we loved him because he helped us to see the joyous meaning of life. And even though at times he would tell me I don't see myself as a religious person, we have to say that when someone has the qualities of life that he portrayed, clearly he was deeply religious. And so on an occasion such as this, we can ask the question, whether a life is long or short, how do you measure its success? And maybe this definition can help supply the answer. And I'm quoting, "He has achieved success who has lived courageously, who has laughed often, who has loved much, who has gained the trust and respect of intelligent men and women, and the love of little children, who has filled his niche, who has accomplished his task, who has left the world better than he found it, who has looked for the best in others, who was given the best he had, whose life was an inspiration, and whose memory a benediction. So can we not, without any hesitation, say this about the life of this wonderful man? His life fits in beautifully with that formula for success. He loved to be surrounded by friends and family and beauty and nature. He enjoyed his travels. He enjoyed his speaking occasions. He didn't live to take that Porsche on a cross-country trip, but he still showed that desire right up until the end. Why? Because life was always enjoyable, as Stephen reveled in God's world. He was grateful for all that life gave him. His wonderful wife is truly a mutual admiration society. Beloved sons and their spouses, to whom he was both a loving father and a friend. Wonderful grandchildren. He lived to see the Benot Mitzvah in France of two of his grandchildren. And so it's natural that those of us who loved him and honored him should now grieve at his passing. For the greater our love, the greater, understandably, must be our grief. And yet, as great as is the grief at parting, even greater must be the feeling that Stephen has truly earned the right to rest. These last 4 years were not only difficult, but gave him an opportunity to use his mental skills to make connections around the country. Former students who were able to help him out in programs that gave him maybe some extra months of life. The greater our love, as I say, the greater our grief. And yet, as great as is the grief at parting, even greater must be the feeling that Stephen has earned the right to rest. May the blessed memories of his many, many virtues give each of us courage for the days and the weeks ahead. An insight from a Jewish sage who lived 2,100 years ago. His name was Ben Sirach. He wrote the following: "Fear not death. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived and with all who ever will be. Bewail the dead, hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning, but remember, continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory rest. Be consoled when the soul departs. Death, Ben Sirach wrote, is better than a life of pain. Eternal rest is better than constant sickness. Seek not to understand what is too difficult for you. Search not for what is hidden from you. Be not overoccupied with what is beyond you, for you have been shown more than you can understand. As a drop of water in the sea, and as a grain of sand on the shore, are a person's few days in eternity. The good things in life last for limited days, but a good name endures forever. O God, our Father, you redeem our souls from the grave. You are the rock of our salvation. Forsake us not in time of trouble, in days of distress and desolation. Help us endure, O Lord, for we have placed our hope in you." His boys are going to share some personal insights now, as well then of his brother Lauren.
So unfortunately, you would think that we'd be getting good at this by now. It's been a year of multiple funerals for our family. And I should have, in honor of my dad, brought my index cards and pen, but instead I put it on my iPhone with some of my notes. I just want to touch on a couple of points of color for a life that was very important for all of us and all of you. When my brother and Anthony and I were growing up, I think we mostly felt that we saw one side of our dad, and I think we didn't appreciate that he had two until we were much older. And certainly most other people really got the charm and the nice, one of the at the same time one of the sweetest people I know, and he's a big softie. But I didn't realize that when I was young, because he was a marshmallow wrapped inside of sandpaper. And I think the best illustration of what I missed and didn't appreciate when I was really young, when I was really young, when we were in Minnesota, my brother and I cajoled him into us getting a dog, which he really didn't seem to want to get. And he never really seemed to care for our dog Princess, nice golden retriever. She was very sweet, a lot of trouble. And I thought he couldn't stand her. And every night at dinner, he would be yelling at Princess because she'd be begging for food. And it wasn't until I was much older that I've realized that every night under the table, he was slipping her food. And when she grew much older and sick and had to be carried up and down stairs because she couldn't do it, walk up and down stairs herself, when she had to, and it was really her time, he was not ready to let go because he loved her too much and he was too much of a softie. But we come to appreciate these things as we get older, and we see more sides. I was able to see even a lot more as my brother started having kids, and as Marnie and I had Sophie, and watching our father with our kids was just amazing and warm, and we really properly saw the full spectrum of his personality that I think we didn't appreciate it when we were young, and as you don't appreciate many things when you're young. Another point, there's been a lot of talk of my father as a professional. I mean, he was big in his field, and he loved his work. And sometimes, we couldn't always understand that, but at the same time, again, you don't appreciate that a good portion of our family friendships, our extended family includes students and colleagues, faculty at CMU and other University of Chicago and University of Minnesota. All these people that were so important to him in his work, they're an important part of our family. We had students that stayed with us, and friends and colleagues that would come to Shabbat and come to Passover Seders and to high holiday dinners, and it was just a normal thing. Everyone was part of the family. And as my mom reminded me, just to point out as we talk about his professional life, he was ever a specialist, including even as a kid when he was a camp counselor. He wasn't just a counselor, he was Steve Canoe, and he was the guy that would take care of that. No ordinary counselor. He had a full life. It was cut too short. But I just want to thank and make it known. He had a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, a lot of researchers. They made sure that we at least got a little bit of an extension. And we're very grateful for that. And even at the last moments, we had good hospice care. We had a great nurse that came and took care of us, and someone that was with us in the end, helping out at night. And we couldn't have done any of this without her. And I'll leave it at that. He'll be dearly missed.
Dear Dad, the last time I wrote you, it was by email, and we were contemplating which family members to bring for the holidays and when to be with you. How I am so lucky that Mom tipped me off. that you might soon be headed onto your next journey. So I hopped on a plane, traveling 4,000 miles, to arrive just in time to accompany you from the hospital back home. And the next day we watched a Penguins game together with Howard, a traditional Fienberg activity. How fitting it is to hold this service in the synagogue. And I have to pause because this isn't written in here, because we actually came to this particular chapel as opposed to the main synagogue for the Fast of the Firstborn ceremonies. End of parentheses. Where you presided over Howard's and my B'nai Mitzvah, and where we spent so many high holidays in our formative years. You were steadfast in us marrying Jewish women, holding a Jewish wedding, making a Jewish home, and making sure our children would continue to perpetuate our family's Jewish heritage. So, as I have been explaining to your grandchildren, whom I know you loved more fiercely than even a single malt scotch, there must have been a real shortage of exceptional people for God to tap you to join his team this year. You were not just a regular dad because it was impossible to walk into a room of academics without hearing stories about how you inspired generations of statisticians with your intellect, insight, and visionary methods. However, what I saw and learned from you is how to be focused and determined. Most people would take determination and immediately associate it with your last 4 years' fight, even making a connection to the struggle that Jacob had with Esau's angel in this week's Torah reading. But those two qualities, focus and determination, are both found in Jacob's taking his family and worldly possessions across a river. Now, I know you're going to roll your eyes when I say this. Just as you kept up both professional pursuits and family responsibilities in the face of daunting adversity, Jacob returns to retrieve some small jugs of apparently no great value. But they contain oil, that with which a miracle will happen. In other words, Hanukkah, starting in just a week's time. The jugs represent people who didn't know you, because you will continue to bring light to us all. By the way, isn't it fitting that the angel tells Jacob that his name will be changed to Israel, your given Hebrew name? On another side note, since your life was devoted to numbers, I wonder the extent to which it is significant you left on your most recent journey at 74 years of age, and I am 47 years old. As your nephew, now Rabbi Avi, said yesterday, and I'm quoting, "Now more than ever, we have a responsibility to learn from his actions and exemplary character, from his inner strength, and carry on his legacy in a way that would make him proud. In this manner, his memory and his soul lives on with each of us." End of quote. I know you are watching now and will continue to be stretching your protective arm over us. We will make sure Mom has lots of nachas for decades to come, and you too, for your eternal journey. Missing you terribly already. Love, Anthony.
I'm Lorne. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the baby brother. Almost exactly 2 months ago, I had the honor of standing up in front of a large gathering at the Carnegie Museum, surrounded by the exhibits of the wild animals. And we were paying tribute to Steve for his illustrious career of research, of service, and mentorship. And I was told that my remarks were intended to be the light-hearted portion of the tribute. Today's gathering is different and sadder. Our purpose is the same, to honor Steve, not just for his career, but for his love of family and his love of life and all of its pleasures. And me, I'm still intended to be the lighthearted portion of the tribute. I determined not to give the same thoughts that I gave at the Carnegie Museum 2 months ago, although I will pick up on the wild animal theme. In the fall of 2011, before Steve began his long, courageous battle, I emailed him with what I thought was a preposterous suggestion that he and Joyce join Nona and me on a safari to Tanzania and the Serengeti. I considered it preposterous because there would be no professional conferences, there would be no papers to present, no admiring colleagues from around the world, no fine restaurants, and only a limited nightly choice of wines. Just 13 days with several of his closest family members, living in tents, eating whatever could be cooked in a camp kitchen, and keep in mind that Steve was celiac and he had given the chefs very detailed instructions about what they had to prepare. But there we were, out on the plain, but again, surrounded by wild animals. When Steve agreed to the proposal, it was one of the happiest days of my life as a brother. At last, Steve, not as illustrious, world-famous statistician, but just as Big Brother. And I'm happy to say that Steve was up to the challenge. Standing together on the first morning on a hill above the entry to the Serengeti, we had no conversation about Steve's itinerary for the next 6 months, no description of the government committees that he sat on in DC at regular intervals, no discussion even of our care arrangements for our mother, Ida, in Toronto, as she entered her vigorous march to her 100th year. Like people often do, we stood on the plane and we compared bars on our cell phones, just in case. And we scanned the mountains near Kilimanjaro looking for cell towers. On this occasion, we didn't discuss the census and how to achieve an accurate count. No, on this morning we were counting gazelles. Steve had already failed to impress our guide Kilau with his Wikipedia-based knowledge of the Great Migration. And we quickly discovered, and we all enjoyed the fact, that he had no particular expertise distinguishing a Thompson gazelle from a Grant's gazelle, from an impala. But this didn't perturb Steve a bit. Those of you who have gone on safari know that even without hunters' weapons, it's a fiercely competitive pursuit. Being the first to spot a leopard in a tree, identifying a white rhinoceros several miles away by a pond, Steve was all in on the sport. Although it was amazing how frequently his shouts of elephants found us gazing at huge clusters of gray boulders when we got closer. On the second day, our guide, seeking a shortcut across the plain, managed to get our Land Rover stuck in the mud. When Steve's suggestions to Kilau about the best way to get the vehicle out of the mud fell on deaf ears, Steve calmly produced a neatly folded New York Times crossword puzzle. And for the next hour, he sat on a rock overlooking the Serengeti, ignoring Kilau's warnings about lions in the vicinity. He came down after he had completed the puzzle, and the Land Rover was still in the mud. Steve was no linguist, and we've always considered this an amazing fact, considering his world travels, and considering that his loving grandchildren in Paris, who along with his grandchild Sophie, were the love of his later years. It was amazing that he never spoke French to them. He was a lover of Israel who spoke no Hebrew. And for a man who knew everything, this astonished us. But Joyce, in this regard, as in so many others, completed Steve. While Steve solved his crossword puzzle up on a rock, we remember Joyce industriously studying her crib sheet of Swahili phrases. And that night, after we had dinner, Joyce said to the server, I think I have this right, Lala Salama, which I think means good night. In any event, the joy that the server experienced was so impressive that the next morning, when Steve wanted his bucket of hot water for a shower, he shouted out, Jumbo, Jumbo. And he said, Asante, Asante Sana. And on that occasion, Steve became the linguist he was not always, and we were very proud of him. At night, we sat out with our 5th glass of wine, or maybe our 6th, telling stories of canoe trips of yesteryear around the campfire in Algonquin Park and in Northern Ontario. Steve always recalled his exploits as lead tripper for a cabin of teenage girls. I was always the junior camper, struggling to carry a pack across the swampy portage. Our wives listened and pretended rapt attention to stories they'd been listening to for decades. And in this way, Steve and I tamed the wilds of Africa together. Finally, there was the Maasai healer. On an afternoon after our touring was winding down, the Maasai healer came to the lodge where we were staying to offer advice about proper healing techniques. Steve was experiencing problems with his back, and I invented difficulties with a knee so that I could participate. And at the end, having tried to match each other with our complaints, the Maasai healer proposed a cure, a healing Maasai massage. And there began the negotiation as to how much the massage was going to cost. And the Maasai healer said that he didn't take cash or credit cards, and that he only accepted payment in cows. And we were stuck. When we finally figured out how the game was played, we went to the front desk at the lodge where they did take American Express, and we bought the requisite number of cows to pay the Maasai healer. Our wives had never yet heard the complete details of the massage ritual out there in the open sky, including the aromatic baths drawn for us by the Maasai healer's lovely assistant, Julia. But when we were done, Steve swore he felt much better for about 15 minutes. Some years later, when Steve bought his fast little red sports car, I was required to admire the machine and I asked him how much it cost. Without skipping a beat, he replied, 983 cows. That's the brother I'm going to remember best.
A colleague and a friend is the cantor Jack Mostov is going to lead us in the El Malei Rachamim. I invite you to please rise.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamramim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Torim כזוהר רק ימזהירים את נשמת ישראל יצחק בזמרו וחיה שלח לעולמו בגן עדן די מנוחתו ענה בעל הרחמים הסירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים נשמתו אדוני ונחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
O God is exalted and full of compassion. Grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and among the pure to the soul of our dear Yisrael Yitzchak ben Zev V'chaya. Our dear Dr. Stephen Fienberg, beloved husband to Joyce Libman Fienberg, proud father to Anthony and Magali Fienberg, Howard and Marnie Fienberg, dear brother to Lauren and Nona Fienberg, proud and doting grandfather to Tiffany, Selena, Victoria, Juliana, Adam, and Sophie, dear uncle to Daniel, to Ori and Emily, to Hannah and Nachum, to Avi and Atara, to Devorah and Michael, to Miriam and Ephraim, also survived by great nieces and great nephews. Our dear Stephen Fienberg has gone on to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you to remember all of the worthy and all of the righteous deeds that he performed here in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace, as we all say. Amen.
Amen.
Family, the interment service will take place at the Tree of Life Memorial Park. Family will be returning to their residence at 537 North Neville Street. They'll be sitting Shiva just today until Shabbat, which is at 4:30. There will be services on Sunday evening through Wednesday evening at... Sunday morning through Thursday morning at 8, right?
8 in the morning.
8 in the morning, in the evening at 4:30, beginning Sunday at 4:30 through Wednesday at 4:30.
Will the following please step forward. Daniel Fienberg, Ori Fienberg, Ralph Roskis, Bob Libman, Gary Foster, and Alan Weinstock. Will the rest of you please remain standing quietly at your places?
Usual sex of the words